Hey guys, welcome back to Chris and Retro. Tonight's subject is going to be about fatherhood, being dads, what our role actually is, and I'm coming to you dealing with insecurities I have as a father, but also just I've been seeing a lot of stuff coming up with different events and things like that they're doing to kind of promote fatherhood. I thought it'd be a good subject for us to talk about tonight because it's such a critical component in terms of prevention, how kids live their lives, and that sort of thing. It's kind of funny is as I'm recording this, I just got done telling the younger kids that I'm going to be going live on, or I'm going to be recording. Keep your volume down. I hit record the first time, and my stepdaughter, 7 years old, comes up and starts banging on the door because she wants me to bring a stuffed animal in here, I guess, to watch what I'm doing. So whatever. Anyway, yeah. So it's not without testing our patience for sure. Um, I've seen recently that we have this big deal made out of. I guess last week, certain school districts here in New York, there were certain school districts that had, and I know it was a nationwide thing where fathers were encouraged to bring their kids to school that day. And so I'm not really sure what drove that. Somebody has this idea. I thought it was a cool idea. Our school district, I don't think, had it, but it was. I think it's a good idea to encourage involvement. My sarcasm on it is probably the same dads that are involved in the kids' lives every single day were the ones that showed up to there. But who knows? Either way, I think it's a useful exercise. We, you know, fathers not being present is not some novel thing that I'm presenting. We have fathers either not there or abusive in a home, and there's even cliches out of it. If I look at Sean Strickland, the current middleweight champion of the UFC, he's very open about his bad relationship with his dad, how massively abusive his father was. He sort of jokes about it, but he does what a lot of boys do, and the boys are talk about him as the old man used to, the old man, my old man used to do this, that, and whatever. I mean, I've heard those stories. I grew up sort of country, where we are now, and where I grew up was very rural, and in that setting, that type of language would be used towards abusive fathers. I knew people in our very close circle that had very abusive, physical abusive fathers to them. And the young women and that type of thing when they get older, we both know the cliche daddy issues, and it's always associated with some negative connotation relative to how they're living their lives, or how their dating practices oftentimes play out. I don't know the psychology behind it. I wouldn't pretend to be a counselor or psychologist in any way, shape, or form. What I'm doing is making some observations that say that dads, our role is huge, and we should take it real seriously. I want to say one more time, I'm not coming on here as an expert about any of this stuff, and in many ways, some of my biggest insecurities are my behavior as a father over the years and the things that I have not done to support my kids and the things I have done to hurt their lives. Every single one of them, I can probably, without any effort whatsoever, come up with a dozen different examples of where I believe I failed them. And it is a burden. It's something we go, but that's not really an excuse. It means that's what I feel about the subject matter, but it does need to be addressed. And how do we deal with those sorts of things? You know, um, there is only one father that I think is perfect, and that's God Himself. Even the man that wrote the book Fatherhood was a complete scumbag, Bill Cosby. We're not really. None of us are going to be able to write the book or the prescription for doing this correctly, but we can have conversations as men and hold each other accountable to how we behave. I feel like my dad, and I've said this on the show a bunch of times, was a great example of how to be a father. He showed me hard work. My dad worked tons of hours in the printing industry. I mean, he was not home a lot, but when he was home, he was 100% present. He taught me how to throw a ball. He played catch with me when I was pitching all the way up through high school until it started getting a little kind of crazy. And um, I think it stopped the one day he had a catcher's glove. I got so I could throw pretty hard, and I skipped a curveball, I think, short off his shins, and one caught him between the legs, and I think that was pretty much it. That was a wrap for playing catch. But he was always supportive that way. Always showed up to my high school events. Was very encouraging that way. Later on in life, when his loyalty would be tested, based on my own behavior in my 30s and 40s, my father was always there. My poor behavior started shortly after the divorce. Well, I mean, arguably my whole life I've had issues, the book I'm writing out now has been very therapeutic, but it's also I'm creating a lot of observations about my own behavior, and many of my problems were there the whole time. But they didn't start to really cost me heavily until I lacked accountability later on. And my father was always loyal when things kind of fell apart, but not too far. He had boundaries, but he was there when a push came to shove. I always knew my dad was going to be there, and I've talked about that on the show before. My dad, I think some of the elements when I look at what he did and what I see in fathers that I find a lot of respect in and the things I aspire to be is he worked hard. He had personal. This is a big one I think we miss. We have, especially with divorce situations, you hear about Disney dads or whatever they call them. I forget how they call them. Anyway, they come in and they shower the kid with gifts and all this other stuff, and then leave them, the mother, who usually has primary residency, with having to deal with the everyday life, and they don't seem as to have as much luster as the weekend dad coming in and pouring all this stuff all over the kid, and yet they have such a critical role. And they've got to grind it every day, and sometimes they lose confidence in their role and how much the kids love them, because it just seems like there's elevated presence when they're around, because they're only there a little bit. Those dads, they have a role, but I think that the better role is more consistency. But one of the things I think we think our value as fathers is that that we do those things for our kids. That's actually not the case. Our value as fathers is that we're present for our kids, and that we show them how to live and how to behave by our lives. That's one thing I've learned through my down season, more than anything. At least I probably knew that, but it's become something that's more important for me in my life as I grow older and as I've gone through this whole season. Probably the area I beat myself up the most as a father right now is, am I living the way that I should be modeling, and is it a way that's productive and healthy for me to stay the course so I don't ever put my kids back through that again? And that's something I struggle with every day. But my dad, one of the things that he always did was he would always model fitness goals. It may not seem like much, but it really was. My dad wasn't some big Brutus Jack guy. He's smaller than me, but I remember at 40, he ran his first half marathon. My father's attitude on working out was, if he doesn't get to it today, that's fine. He's going to be doing this for his life. I think that's a great attitude. Here he is in his 80s, and he still does what he can to remain fit. Sometimes he pushes a little too far, I think, but either way, he's always had personal goals, and that was an important example. Worked real hard and was always loyal to my mother. That was a big one too. They're still married, and he's still loyal to her as she struggles with health in her later years. So all that stuff, that selflessness, loyalty, his defense of our family. He could be a very aggressive defender of our family. I seen him do a full sprint across a yard at a mid-20s young man that decided to flip off me and a friend of mine when we were really young kids by a pool. He decided to course correct that, and immediately the kid got his eyes huge when he seen my dad running across the yard, and he sprinted down the road. So I'll never forget that as long as I live. I thought it was hilarious. But I find that my dad was a great example for me, but I don't think that the model that we had in our life is even realistic for a lot of families. So how do we as dads, when we don't have it all together, let's say that we've really blown it, like perhaps you and I have done, and we're going through a season where we can't be what my dad was to me. We can't have lived an honorable life because it's just not possible to go backwards. So what do we do now? Well, I think one of the things goes back to this ongoing notion that we're going to make promises to our kids and we're going to keep them. We're going to become somebody that's so predictable that they can count on us. There's security in that. We're going to show them through discipline. My father was a disciplinarian, sometimes a little aggressive depending on how far I pushed it, but he had lines, and we were not crossing those lines. So discipline, I think, is important because it shows kids where they can go and be safe and where they can't go and not be safe. And as long as it's consistent, that works out well and not abusive. As I talk to you guys about these concepts, I almost feel as though I should not do this video because I feel and hear examples through my head of where I failed my kids in so many ways as I bring up these subjects, but I know they're where we have to fight for. As a, hopeless alcoholic and one that struggles with my mental health issues even as we're here, as I've just attested to as I go through this and look at some of my past, we also have to make sure that we're there having more interest in how their lives are and what our role is to help them become stronger than we do about how we look as fathers. And for me, I see that as a real something that is important that I look at, because the weekend warrior dad that comes in as Disney dad, that's more about how he looks. It's less about what's going on actually for the kids. And this is a huge, huge thing I see all the time in recovery circles. We as men, I think some women do it as well. I maybe just because I'm so focused on the man part of it right now. But as fathers, I see us use our kids as demonstrations of our rehabilitation all the freaking time. All the time. Our kids are not demonstrations of us doing better or our sobriety. You and me, we're demonstrations of our rehabilitation and our sobriety. Our kids are our children, and they need to know their dad is present and providing a secure, stable environment for them so they can look to that person for guidance when life gets a little hard, or when life is going good. They look in the crowd and you're sitting there. When life is challenging, they got tough decisions to make, and you might not know the answers. You can help them at least figure it out, because you're going to be with them while both of you try to figure out uncertain things. Lord knows that if you have kids, we've all been there at one point or another. None of us are experts in everything. But what your kids are not is they're not a badge of honor and a badge of sobriety. They're not. And that may seem counterintuitive or even a little hypocritical coming from me, because I've got enough videos out there of me and my daughter, my youngest daughter, and plenty of pictures with me and my kids out there since my sobriety. But it's joy. It's my life. So I'm not really defending that. They're not my badge of sobriety. They're my joy. And honestly, I get to enjoy them more now because I'm not intoxicated. I don't have problems. I don't have to avoid seeing them because I can't drive to go get them. You know, there's all that's gone. I get to just be in their life and be present. You know, I have great gifts returned to me by being a father that's more committed to my children than I've ever been in my life. Now, I have always loved my children, and I've always been so thankful for them. And even through their whole life, and through the good and the bad, even before my addiction took off, even before then, all of it, I tried to be involved in their lives. I taught, played catch with them, did all that stuff as my dad did for me. Been to their events, I've never been an absentee father in that way. However, I did put them through hell for a season, and I also don't think that my motivation was always correct. I don't think that at every point in my life was my sole focus on being there because of them and what they need for me, because they are my life. And now more than ever, I do a lot of, I have a great job. I love doing this. I'm working on my book and trying to get that finally wrapped up. I got a lot going on, but my kids are my life. I got FaceTime for my daughter in college tonight. She's a psych major, so I told her she might want to look into why she's so excited about this. But she just turned 20 a couple weeks ago, and her boyfriend, for whatever reason, bought her a I got to talk to this kid too. This is not what you buy for your girlfriends or your wives, but he bought her a hot plate. So you're not buying cooking utensils or cleaning products. I got to coach him on that one, but he's a good kid and been raised well. But she got a hot plate, and she called me, FaceTime me to show me that she was cooking chicken in her room for the first time, and this was like super exciting, which makes no sense to me because she lives in a independent housing off campus where they have a great kitchen, but for whatever reason, this is her new novel event. The point is that that's what children are, is to have these relationships with kids that they're going to let you know what's going on with their lives, but you can be part of it. You can actually be part of it and enjoy it. It really does enhance your life. As dads, I joke a lot. Like if you know me personally, you know my sense of humor is a little darker, especially with my kids, and they all know it, and they know I'm kidding and stuff like that. But I'll make jokes about with Nova, my youngest, saying if she doesn't knock it off, we're gonna duct tape her to the ceiling fan and turn it on high. I'm never gonna put my kid on a ceiling fan, just for all you guys that lose your mind over stuff like that. But it's this kind of sarcasm we have going, and being present around them is how you get to have these relationships that are a little off and unique to what you guys have going on. I've been around other fathers that also have that kind of joking with their kids that way, but at the same time, so it doesn't always have to be this ooey gooey Cocoa Puffs moment where you're hugging all over kids to actually have love and have a strong relationship with them. That's one thing I have learned, and they return the favor with sarcasm like you wouldn't believe. They've got, I won't even get into the miles of stuff that they're planning for me when I can't defend myself at some point down the road. This video was important to me tonight because I heard the subject come up. We've heard from a number of guests that the reason they were going down the road they were going to went down was because of father situations. We've heard of losing your father early on. I have personal friends that lost. One friend, I think of right offhand, lost her father at 5. And that can entirely change the trajectory of her life. She lost him to addiction, alcoholism, and it led to a life where she was then in a serious relationship with the father of her first child, who was an addict and overdosed and died. And it's like, this is how this whole thing going. And so as fathers, we set the course a lot of times for even the spouses or the partners that our kids choose. Guys, I hope this information was useful to you, and I hope this video was something that was challenging to you as a dad. Your job really boils down to this: be present and be authentic with your kids. Help set boundaries. Don't be over the top. I think a lot of times as fathers, we think that we're the king of everything. Just because we're in a position of authority doesn't necessarily mean we know everything. I fall into that trap all the time, and I have to check myself a lot. But Appreciate you guys. I really do. Thanks for tuning in. Consider your role in your kids' lives and the lives of those kids around you. If you have stepkids, they add a whole level of complexity that is, if you are a stepfather, you understand there's a whole level of complexity there, and I'm probably the worst person to coach about that one, because I don't know that I've cracked the code on that myself. But the job is to be present. The job is to make sure you're there and making sure they're safe and their needs are met, and then go from there. But I appreciate you guys very much, and please, from now until the next time we talk, stay out of trouble.